who's up in the booth there. We get it, bringing down the music. All right. Hey, hi everyone. My name's Warren Langford, and I'm a producer with 505-O-Matic. Thanks for coming out tonight. We are going to get things going here, but first I thought I'd do a little bit of housekeeping. If you don't know who we are, we're New Mexico news and information. We're mostly online, and we make little videos that you might know as like TikToks or Reels or something. If you aren't familiar with us, this is a good way to find out more. This goes to our website, and we also we're gonna launch into a slideshow here. It's gonna have a ton of information that we're gonna get into on this issue tonight, and that will all be up there at the 7 in the morning. I'll post it. So if you become a subscriber at 505omatic.com, which is a newsletter, it's kind of a blog, then you will get that in your inbox in the morning. So yeah, take your time if you want to scan that. If you aren't going to or are done scanning it, please silence your phones. Put them on do not disturb or whatever you need to do. But yeah, that's just about it. Are we ready to get into this? All right, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. We're super excited to have this discussion, an in-depth analysis retrospective on New Mexico's hardcore, grindcore scene here. Let's see if we can get this going. Hold on. Whoa, nothing's working. You'd love to see this. Wait, is that not what we're supposed to be? Oh, wait, it's saying wait. Wait? What? Oh, this is ruining my joke.
All about time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, wait. What happens if I move over here? Okay, there's my...
Oh, what happened to your sound?
My sound is still here. Hang on. Whoa. Thank you. That was almost a disaster. Thank you.
Nice job. Good reflexes.
Oh my God, we got a full-on
Page unresponsive.
page unresponsive. We're going to exit the pages. Oh my gosh, is it like...
It's
Don't look at that. That's so boiling.
Everybody close your eyes! Close your eyes. Don't look. Hide the live stream.
Canva, come back.
You're shattering the illusion.
The illusion.
Everyone look at Cinco.
Here we go.
Over here.
Keys.
Okay. Here we go. And we're going to prevent full screen. We're just going to do it.
It's happening.
All right.
It's happening.
Okay, remember that joke that I said? Okay, so let's get back into that. This is our presentation of
The metal scene.
the metal scene here
Yeah,
in...
Warren, that's not this show. That's not what we're supposed to do.
Oh,
No. We talked about it. We're going to do this next month.
so we're not...
No, we're not going into the hardcore, grindcore metal scene of New Mexico to everyone's disappointment. We're not talking about the metal scene. We're talking about the medical scene.
Oh, well, it is kind of hardcore.
Yes, it's very hardcore. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, that's logical nonsense, local band. Great.
Yes.
So yeah, our presentation tonight, we're calling it Diagnosis No Bueno. And why don't you kick it off, Katie?
Sure. Everyone, I'm Katie Gross. I'm also a producer here at 505-O-Matic. Thank you all for being here. We have a lot to dive into. We know this is a huge topic right now. It's pressing on a lot of people's minds. It's a big issue in the legislature, so there's a lot for us to cover. But we know that this is something that really affects us all. It's a universal issue. So how many here in the audience has had trouble finding a specialist in the last few months? Okay.
Oh, that's a lot of you. That's a lot of hands.
Or maybe your general practitioner has left and you've had to find a new general practitioner. Okay, a few more hands. So yeah, we know this is a crisis. This is affecting all of us. So we wanted to dive into this, and because the legislature is happening right now, we actually know some things that are being proposed, some solutions to this. So we brought in our lovely guests who we'll introduce to you because we didn't really know much about this issue until 2 weeks ago and did a crash course. So we're still learning about all of this as we go as well. So hopefully you won't think any of our questions are too stupid.
Yeah.
But yes, so let's go ahead. We'll start here. We have Christina Fisher. And Christina is the Associate Director at Think New Mexico. And each of them will say a little bit about themselves as well.
There you go. You guys can all have a microphone, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's turn these on. There you go.
Sorry we don't have special colored caps for all of them.
Maybe I'll just get a chair.
He doesn't want to sit by this anymore. Aw. Don't date a person.
Never do.
All right, yes.
Sure. So I'm Christina Fisher, Associate Director of Think New Mexico. I grew up here in Santa Fe. Think New Mexico has been around since 1999. We are a nonpartisan think tank. We develop and advocate for solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing New Mexico. Through the years, we've worked on repealing the food tax, getting full-day kindergarten in the schools instead of half-day, ending predatory lending, and then in 2024, we launched our big effort on addressing the healthcare worker shortage. As you noted, very big crisis. So happy to be here tonight.
So yeah, think tanks. Can we just pause there real quick and talk a little bit about a think tank? Because I think a lot of us think about think tanks and we think, well, who's paying them to think? Can we get into that just a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So at least in the case of Think New Mexico, I can't speak to think tanks broadly, but you are paying Think New Mexico to think. So 60% of our funding comes from individual donors. About 30% comes from local foundations. Another small proportion comes from our investments and from rental income in the building that we're in. But it is overwhelmingly individual donations from about, this last year, 1,400 different New Mexicans. So that's who's paying the bills.
Excellent. And these individual donors, do they say, like, hey, can you have a certain kind of thought come out of that tank? How does a thought get out of the tank anyway?
Excellent question. So we have a bipartisan board of directors. You can look them up on our website, thinkthnewmexico.org. We've got a former Republican governor, former Democratic Attorney General. Roberta Cooper Ramos, our president. She's the first woman president of the American Bar Association and the American Law Institute, so very, very legally talented. Those folks are where the thoughts come from. So each year our board selects a topic that they feel is urgently in need of being addressed, and usually a topic that we talk about maybe being undervalued in the sense of nobody's really pushing it right now. So we look for areas where we think we can make a difference by putting out good, solid, well-grounded research and ideas for our legislature to consider. We like to do a lot of interstate comparisons. So we'll say, how is New Mexico doing relative to other states? What are other states doing better we could learn from? What has New Mexico maybe done better in its history that we could rediscover? That was one on predatory lending. We found we'd had a really good interest rate cap that went away in the 80s, and we were able to work with the legislature to bring it back. So we get good ideas from our history as well.
Gotcha.
Great. And next we have Dr. Leslie Hayes. And Dr. Hayes is the Chief Clinical Officer at El Centro Family Health in Espanola, New Mexico. And I'll let you say more.
I was also raised in New Mexico, have been here pretty much my entire life other than when I left for schooling. And I am board certified in both family medicine and addiction medicine. I've been at El Centro Family Health, which is a federally qualified health center, so I'm a little bit different than docs in private practice in a lot of the ways we're going to be talking about tonight. And some of them are actually fairly protective for us. Others were really at risk because of it. And I practice in Espanola. I have been there for 31 years. I am right now, I believe, I'm the employee at El Centro Family Health who's been there the longest, and I think I'm also the physician in Espanola who's been there the longest. So over 30 years in both. So
That's very cool.
Wow. What, did you choose to go to Espanola, or how did you end up in Espanola?
So I grew up in Los Alamos, but I wanted to go to a place that was underserved, and my father and stepmother actually lived in Espanola. And I wanted to be close to where my parents were. And so I looked and I was like, yeah, I want to go to Espanola. So it was a good choice. I have the best patients on the planet. Sorry for you folks out in Los Alamos, and other places, but my patients did the best.
Sweet.
And we are also joined with Representative Mariana Naya. You're state representative for District 18 in Albuquerque. Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here on our couch?
Yeah, seriously. Question of the night, everyone. But hi, I'm Mariana Naya. I am a freshman state legislator. But before I was a state legislator, I have this whole history that comes with me as well. So I was born and raised in Albuquerque's North Valley. I'm from one of those families, those good old New Mexico families that have been here for generations and generations. Let's see here, I went away for school, so went to UT Austin, UCLA, and I'm one of the boomerangs that came back home. And when I came back, yay, yeah. And so, yeah, great. I love when I find us. It's great because we can also like preach how cool New Mexico is. But when I came back, I actually started off as a community organizer. I was in community organizing specifically for LGBTQ issues, helped repeal the old abortion ban that we had on the books, helped make sure that we have abortion and gender affirming care protections for providers, and I've worked on just an array of issues. And it turns out that my predecessor, Representative Gil Chasey, decided that she was out. She was going to retire finally, and I happened to be in the district, and I thought, all right, okay, I'm here for this. So I signed up, and it turns out that I won, and so I'm here. And this is why I'm on your couch today.
What a journey. And also on our couch is
Drum roll.
My name is Dustin.
Dustin, I was going to say it. Dustin Roberto, student and researcher at UNM's College of Population Health.
Thank you. My name is Dustin. Thank you for having me. I write articles for UNM Health Sciences, in which I've covered a lot of the topics that involve care access, shortages, and what state institutions are doing in the public health sector to try to work as a remedy to the current issues we face, but also support the development of workforce and recruit doctors and encourage resolution to the situation we're talking about today. Doctor, thank you so much for your long-term service to our community. And yeah, honored to sit alongside people who are putting in such great work to try and solve this problem.
So you're kind of our person on the, with hanging out with all the young, hip, little med students, and you've got that beat for us, and so you know what they're saying down in the med schools.
Yes, I'm happy to contribute a general knowledge of what it feels like on a campus where people are being motivated by highly trained faculty to not just pursue nursing programs, advanced certificates, dual programs. Local populations are being supported and encouraged on both of our state universities' websites to engage with the potential for medical school. These are solutions that look years in the future, but also look a couple of weeks ahead. The environment with a newly constructed nursing building on UNM campus, for example, is very vibrant. People are incredibly in touch with this issue. They care and they are motivated.
It's good to hear.
Okay, great. So we're going to start with, so Think New Mexico put out this long report, which has been very informative, helping to look at what some of the problems are, and then a whole series of recommendations that that Think New Mexico recommends to solve our worker shortage crisis. But first we wanted to set the stage, what is happening on a national, what's happening on a national level, and then what is happening.
What's happening generally?
What's happening here
This
now?
microphone. No, but what's unique to New Mexico compared to what's happening on a national level?
Sure. So there is absolutely a national healthcare provider shortage. We're aging as a nation. We're not keeping up with that demand. That said, it is substantively worse in New Mexico, and I think folks have had that experience perhaps if they've ended up having to go out of state for care and are able to access care more quickly and more readily, unfortunately, in other states. So There was a survey by a group called the Physicians Advocacy Institute that was looking at practicing physicians, so those are actually providing care, not just licensed and potentially retired. And they found that while the number of physicians nationwide grew by about 44,000 between 2019 and 2024, it declined in New Mexico by a net 248. So we were actually going backwards in the number of practicing doctors here. So it is a really serious issue, and again, I think everybody has that lived experience of it, but the statistics also bear that out.
Great. And then when we talked, you outlined 5 priority areas that you think the legislature, you're expecting the legislature to address, or you're hoping the legislature to address. So we're actually going to put them up here.
What's broken?
And these are some of the issues we're going to get into tonight. So again, we know that there are a lot of things that are going into this shortage, including things on the national level, but we are focusing on these 5 problem areas. Medical malpractice, interstate compacts, student loan repayment program, gross receipts tax on medical services, and Medicaid reimbursements. So these are, for the most part, what we're going to focus on this evening. With that being said, we want to...
Yeah, so a couple days ago, a follower of ours sent us this thread. Threads are like tweets, but Meta owns it. So this was sent to us from a Dr. Amani Jambakar. Anyone know her on stage? But yeah, she's a surgical oncologist. And yeah, I'll just read it. This is my last week in New Mexico. I moved here 2 years ago to bring innovative breast cancer and melanoma care to the state and improve access to genetic testing. And I did. I explored every place my patients recommended and fell in love with green chili, and I learned the history. I loved this state, but the state does not love physicians. The healthcare environment here is unwelcoming because legislators won't reform malpractice laws to recruit and retain excellent physicians. So yeah, this had 1,000 likes, which is pretty big for Threads. And yeah, it's just kind of reverberating around. We actually caught up with her a little bit afterwards to get her, personal take on this. And so yeah, we're gonna get into this issue.
And so first, we'd like to start with Representative Anaya, and if you could tell us what is wrong with medical malpractice here in New Mexico. Like, why does it need to be reformed?
All right. Well, I love the framing of that question because I'm going to reframe the question. But I think everyone right now is operating from an assumption that medical malpractice is a problem. And I think when we paint that with a really broad brush, we miss a lot of the details. And I say this because for the last year, honestly, since last legislative session, we actually convened a group of both doctors and trial lawyers to come to the same table to talk about medical malpractice in a way that's not hateful, in a way that's meaningful, in a way that's curious, so we can actually say, okay, what are the components of malpractice that we want to work on together, and what does that look like? And so, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I am going to talk about the bill that I dropped. It was dropped yesterday, so I understand it's not on your list right now. But it is. It's a brand new bill. Because when we came together, part of the point was to bring people who are, at least in the media, having this gigantic war against each other, to say, what do we actually have in common? And I say this, and I talked to you a little bit about this before, because before I was a legislator, I was an advocate, I was a lobbyist, and I represented a lot of diverse groups. So I actually represented OBGYNs, I represented nurses, I represented physical therapists, and I also represented New Mexico Safety Over Profit, back in the day when it was called, what were we even called? Fairness for New Mexico Patients. But the cool thing about this was I had the opportunity to work with so many of the patients who were harmed by medical malpractice, right? And so I got to see kind of like what's going on and what the barriers that they face with malpractice, and either with getting justice or quite honestly getting paid back from the state. Like, it's a real problem. And so it was very cool being able to bring these folks together, because the first thing we did was honestly build trust. Because you're laughing because everyone thinks it's funny, but But it's true. Like, I might be Pollyanna about this, but I honestly believe that we have a ton more in common. And I say this because I've worked with all these groups before. And so, you know, I think back to like the repeal of the abortion ban, and I think of protecting abortion gender affirming care. It was actually the trial lawyers who are expert witnesses on this, right? They sit on the legal panels for ACLU. They help us take on big corporations. And so when I got the docs in the room with the trial lawyers, it was like, okay, there are a lot of other things that we agree on, and we started there. And that was the important part, right? And so, you know, when we're talking about either loan repayment or honestly taking on corporate medicine, it is something that we all have in common. And so we laid that foundation. I know, I see the cutoff. I was like, I've also moderated. I know the cutoff when I see it, it's fine. But it's really important. And so when we got to talk about malpractice, the cool thing was people were actually asking questions in curiosity, not in defensiveness. And like that is what moved us to this bill, and it's called MICRA, the Medical Injury and Collaborative Resolution Act. And we actually take from a whole host of other states. I'm sure some folks have heard of Michigan model, folks have heard of candor laws, but what this bill essentially does is it starts restoring communication and quite honestly humanity, if you will, back to the practice of medicine and the interaction between providers and patients. So if something does go wrong, whether or not it's malpractice, even if it's just an adverse outcome, because sometimes that just happens, you know, the provider and the patient can enter into what's called an adverse outcome conference. Either party can invite each other to it, and this will be a conversation that cannot be used in the court of law. So people, like, when you talk to trial lawyers about their clients, they say, honestly, like, I wish somebody would have just answered my questions. I wouldn't have had to go to court. I wish somebody would have just told me what happened. But instead, we have all set up this system in which we're taking humanity out of the practice. We like insert these institutions, and so that is what this bill is seeking to remedy. So we can have these conversations, and if a remedy is needed, because sometimes it is, then it can be offered in that moment, and it's been proven to reduce litigation in other states. And I will stop talking.
Okay, thank you so much.
My quick question is follow up with that. That is an elective thing that, like,
Yep.
both the doctors and the patients would have to choose to do, and it's just a step that could be in between that and the malpractice suit. So it's like a way to conflict resolute the situation.
Sounds crazy, conflict resolution, everyone. But yeah, that's exactly
Okay.
the concept.
But we still have an issue of medical malpractice premiums being higher than any other state, right?
Yeah.
Correct. So I would can I go to it
Yes. Go.
here from,
Yes.
we have some doctors here who feel very strongly about this, and we'd like to let them speak too, and then maybe we can have a little back and forth. So I might actually go to Dr. Angie Bratton, who's been an advocate on this issue, so we can hear from a doctor's experience about why this is what many doctors are saying is the issue in New Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So I am Angie Bratton. I have been in New Mexico now for 33 years. I think Leslie and I were born within 6 months of each other. I am not a native New Mexican, but I have been practicing here for my entire profession. I'm an ophthalmologist. I work in Los Alamos now, but I have also worked in Taos, Espanola, and Santa Fe. And we asked doctors why they were leaving. 96% of them said that their number one concern was the fairness of malpractice laws in this state. Number two concern was the cost of their medical malpractice insurance. So if you actually go and ask doctors why they're considering leaving, and 2/3 of them said they were considering leaving, it's because of our malpractice laws. I think there's a twofold problem. The fairness part all goes with punitive damages. Punitive damages are supposed to be reserved for malintent or reckless disregard, but in this state, 92% of malpractice suits that are brought allege punitive damages. Those are not covered by your insurance, and physicians, what they're saying is that this threatens their practice and their own personal finances. They can lose their car, they can lose their house, they can lose their retirement savings or their college savings for their children. And so we would like to see punitive damages addressed so that we stop the abuse of physicians, is the way we see it. The other part is
Can I
just...
just stop you right there? Is that very unique to New Mexico compared to other states, this punitive damages? And maybe Christina can give you all the numbers, but yes. Right.
And so what we'd like to see is not only a cap on punitive damages, but a different level of proof, which is where we differ from a lot of states, and not allowing punitive damages to be alleged up front. You have to prove to a judge that there's a reason for that. I think that number one thing would make most physicians feel a whole lot better.
Christina, can you explain what punitive damages are?
Sure. So what Dr. Bratton just said is honestly what Think New Mexico heard over and over and over again from doctors when we started doing our research and I went into this thinking punitive damages and malpractice was not going to be a major factor. And I heard otherwise from the doctors themselves when we said, why are you considering leaving? They said, this is why. So there are two types of damages you can claim in a malpractice lawsuit. Compensatory damages are about compensating for the harm. So that's things like the cost of medical care, lost wages, pain and suffering. That's to compensate for the injury that was caused as a result of negligence. Punitive damages are meant to punish, that's that punitive word. And so they really are supposed to be reserved for very rare instances when someone has intentionally or incredibly recklessly done something. Not just the sort of accident that anyone can do, where you're like, I slipped up, it should have been better care, but it certainly wasn't intentional, it certainly wasn't reckless. And yet, as Dr. Bratton said, we're seeing punitive damages claimed in 92% of cases. And the reason we see that is New Mexico's law is different from most states. We have the lowest standard of proof in the nation. We're one of only 13 states that allows punitives to be proven by a preponderance of the evidence. So that's 50% plus one. If you have an equally balanced scale and a feather falls on one side, you've got preponderance of the evidence. 32 states require clear and convincing evidence. You must be much more convinced than not that punitive damages are warranted in this case before you award them. Colorado sets a criminal law standard. You have to prove punitives beyond a reasonable doubt to award them in Colorado. And there was a recent article with a lawyer in Colorado saying, I almost never see them in medical malpractice cases because of that high standard. 6 states ban punitive damages and malpractice altogether. They just don't think it's a fair part of that process. And so we have this low standard, and then we have no limits. Punitive damages are unlimited, which is why New Mexico has a higher than the national average rate of high malpractice verdicts. We set the record last year with a $412 million verdict, later reduced to $96 million. But you see a lot of verdicts in the tens of millions of dollars here, and much of that is coming from those unlimited punitive damages. And the reason that that's a problem is that it really puts enormous pressure on doctors because they do feel personally threatened. There are some very minor protections. You can protect, I think, up to like $300,000 of your home equity, but other than that, like, it's on the table. And so what we've heard from doctors is they say, even if I don't think I committed malpractice, I think I provided the standard of care, I'm not willing to take that risk. I don't want to roll the dice on a jury and have everything come collapsing down on me, so I'm going to settle. So that's why New Mexico has the highest rate of malpractice payouts of any state in the country per capita, because there is this real pressure for doctors to just settle claims even if they don't think that they're meritorious. And so that's why we are supporting House Bill 99, which addresses the standard of proof for punitive damages. It puts a cap on punitive damages. It addresses several important aspects of that system.
Okay, great. Mariana, do you want to respond?
Yes, I'm happy to respond. So I think the very first thing that I want to hit on is the fact that insurance companies do not pay punitive damages. And I think this is like well known. I think everyone's like, good, right, we're good. Insurance companies do not pay punitive damages. So if they do not pay punitive damages, why are they raising rates on providers? Correct, yes. And so, I think when we're talking about this, there are two kind of buckets that we need to talk about, right? We're addressing punitive damages in one bucket, and speaking to the concerns of docs, right? We're also talking about punitive damages for personal assets. And so, to your point, like the punitive damages are meant to punish, for sure. And in my mind, those should be reserved for corporations. Like, they should be reserved for corporations. And, you know, when we talk about punitive damages, what we're actually talking about is tort reform. And I'm not sure if you all know what tort reform is, but it was a Republican agenda item, like back in the Reagan era. It's been there forever, but the entire, you know, premise of it is to limit liability.
What's a tort?
I am not a lawyer, but when damage is done, right? So when damage is done, and so, right, you actually have like a lot of big historic suits. Like you can think about the oil and gas industry, you can think about the opioid industry. The reason we're getting money right now for the opioid industry is because we're able to honestly sue the hell out of pharma and everyone who is participating in it to make sure that we were addressing the needs of the community. And so I do think that there is a place for punitive damages, and it should be reserved for those big corporations. And when we're talking about individuals, right, I think that's something else that we have to put on the table, because when we're talking about individual docs, like, I don't want corporations here. I don't want corporations eating up all of our local mom and pop docs. And so for me, it's really important that when we talk about this, we are separating the two. And unfortunately, when we talk about malpractice as a whole, we're not doing that. And so for me, I want to stop the mega corporations who are putting doctors in honestly really crappy positions sometimes. They're cutting corners to save money. They have these like corporate management companies that come in, and quite honestly, some of them threatened our OBGYNs and our midwives not too long ago. And they said, if you don't work these hours, if you don't do X, Y, Z, we'll just replace you, right? And so we do need places in the law that still protect people, right? And so, so I wanted to start by addressing that. The other thing that I wanted to address was, usually when you are a doc who is hired by a company, the company itself pays medical malpractice insurance premiums. And it's different when you're talking about folks who own their own practice, right? Because they own a stake in their practice. And so for me, that's another thing that we have to weed through, that we're just kind of painting with a paintbrush right now. And we're saying, we need to do this overarching bill that covers all these things. And I'm like, I forget the actual statistic, but it's somewhere upwards of 80-90% of doctors don't pay their own medical malpractice insurance. And we know this, right? Because we know that corporations are taking over mom and pop shops all the time. And so it's really important that we start with that premise, because if we are trying to limit punitive damages, even folks have talked about caps on compensatory damages before, which I think is just evil. But when we're talking about that, I want to be asking, who are we saving money? Are we saving Ardent money, who's a multi-billion-dollar corporation that owns Loveless? Or are we saving money for locally owned clinics? And so it's just another thing that we have to weed through that I don't think is fair if we're painting with a paintbrush. And last, I will be very quick about this. Naming individuals right now for punitive damages, you could actually honestly be committing legal malpractice, because your job as a lawyer is to make sure that you're covering all your bases, right? And so right now, you name everyone to make sure that you're representing your client in the best way that you can. Now later, punitive damages can come off, but it is true that folks are being named up front. And so once again, it's just something else that we have to weed through as we're talking about this. And I think that was one of the most important things that came from our group, was being able to sit there and say, okay, look, here's what I'm really scared about. Can you tell me about X, Y, Z, right? And then the other party could be like, I'm really sorry. I can see how either what you went through is really hard as someone who went through a lawsuit, or you could see the other side, which was, I'm just trying to protect my client who came to me with these questions. So go for it.
Yeah. Well,
Christina, I think Christina wants to respond.
Just two really quick things. I think one of the reasons we've seen so much consolidation and sort of corporate, growth in New Mexico is because it is so hard to afford to be an independent practitioner. And medical malpractice premiums are one of the drivers of that. I used to have an independent OBGYN who now works for a bigger practice. OBGYN malpractice premiums in New Mexico average over $100,000 a year. So imagine paying that on top of rent and staff. It's really hard to do. In our surrounding states, it's about half that. It's maybe $50,000 a year, which still sounds insane to me, but much, much less. And the question is why? Because insurance companies, I would argue, are equally greedy everywhere. They're not greedier in New Mexico than Arizona or Colorado. So why are they charging twice as much? They're pricing for risk. They're pricing because they are paying out more. They're not paying out punitive damages, but they're paying out more settlements because punitive damages are used to leverage those settlements. And that is one other thing that House Bill 99 addresses by saying you can't claim punitives until after discoveries happen, so until you have those facts. So that would take that pressure off.
I would like to plug my bill that reduces the amount of litigation moving forward. Everybody asks the governor for it to be on her call.
what is the number HB?
It is House Bill 15. I was like, shout it to the universe, House Bill 15, and call the governor.
15, okay.
And
So
sorry,
we're
we
gonna-
don't have this in the slideshow,
Yeah.
but we can try to add it afterwards.
It's
so that-
it's good, don't worry.
But that was a good segue. So we have HB 99 introduced by Representative Christine Chandler, which limits the dollar amount the patient can receive in punitive damages and also requires plaintiffs' costs to be paid out as they are incurred and not as a lump sum. So this is addressing the punitive damages that we've been talking about. And then I think there's another, there's also HB 107, which caps attorney's fees. So we
Yeah.
haven't, does anyone want to go into this at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you asked the nerd to come, I'm sorry.
No, good.
Okay, I do want to give a short story about lump sum. So there is an incredible patient that I worked with. Her name is Brianna Baker, and she's like, I'm sad to use her story because it's so awful, but right now she's essentially, she didn't get lump sum. She is getting as incurred, and right now she actually has to go through another surgical procedure due to the very first instance of medical malpractice. And what we are saying as a state, the Patient Compensation Fund, is not paying for the surgery that she essentially has to front. She is now in trouble and her assets are being taken away, right? Does this sound familiar? Like, her assets are being taken away and she is in a world of debt because the Patient Compensation Fund didn't pay for what they should have paid. And so when we're asking for a lump sum, what we're saying is patients deserve to get the lump sum because they can take that money, invest the money, and it grows. And they can help take care of you in the future. But when you're literally begging the state of New Mexico as if it were an insurance company, it's really hard, right? And so, anyway, so I wanted to give that quick anecdote because I don't feel like a lot of patient stories are out there. And it's really important that we're making sure that whatever it is that we're passing works for the patients who have to use it. And so, attorney fees. All right, this is all part of tort reform. I know I talked about it a little bit earlier. But when we're talking about attorney fees and like capping attorney fees, I also want to make sure that folks know what goes into a lawsuit. So lawsuits are not resolved in like a year or 2 years or 3 years. Like some of these suckers drag out like 7, 8, 15 years. We have cases in the Patient Compensation Fund right now that are over 15 years, right? And so when we're talking about this, plaintiffs' attorneys don't get paid unless they win. Right? Defense attorneys get paid hourly the entire time, right? And so when we're talking about the length of time that we're dragging out these lawsuits, we're actually paying a lot more than actually making sure that we're resolving them quickly. So when we're talking about capping attorneys' fees for plaintiffs' attorneys, sometimes you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plaintiffs' attorneys working on a case over a period of 5, 7, 15 years. And so if you're saying that these folks have to get, you're limited to X amount of money, $100,000 or whatever, whatever the cap is, you're essentially saying like, you should probably just work most of these years for free. And I don't think that's fair. Patients enter into contracts with their attorneys and they say, okay, if we win, we're going in this together, and we have agreed to this amount. And so, anyway,
Christina.
After each one.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to comment
Oh,
as,
yeah, go ahead.
jump in. Is this on?
I don't
Switch.
I just want to comment as a physician, I can imagine nothing worse than having a malpractice suit hanging over my head for 15 years. I mean, physicians are people who really, really do want to do well by their patients. They want to take care of them. And I think for most physicians I know who have had malpractice, the worst part is actually not the financial fear, but the fact that somebody is saying, you are a bad doctor, and it is the worst thing that we can imagine, so.
That's exactly it. And once again, I'll plug my bill where it's resolution, where you have to do this stuff. But no, I hear the same thing.
So on the lump sum payouts, that's really referring to future medical costs. The Patient's Compensation Fund, which is a state fund that makes sure that there's enough money for folks to have their future medicals paid for if there is a malpractice incident. For many, many years from the 1970s until 2021, paid out future medical costs as patients needed them paid. That got changed in 2021. The concern that we have about getting that money as a lump sum is that it puts much more risk on the patient. So the attorney gets their fee out of that lump sum. In New Mexico, there are no caps on attorneys' fees, so we have heard that attorneys can charge upwards of 40% of the verdict. So let's say the patient has future medicals that are estimated to be $5 million. 40% of that comes off the top for the attorney. So then the patient's left with like $3 million, and they are in charge of managing that and making sure that they have that money for the rest of their life. And if they run out, that's on them. The paid as incurred is supposed to be helping them for as long as they need that help. Granted that there are solutions that we can implement to make that a better system, but the lump sum puts much more risk on the patient. The attorney's fees, if you look at which states cap attorney's fees, it's about 20 of them. It's actually a lot of progressive states. It's California, it's Massachusetts, it's New York and New Jersey. I think because it is essentially a consumer protection mechanism, essentially saying you have plaintiffs' attorneys that are filing hundreds and hundreds of cases through their lifetime. You have plaintiffs that hopefully have one case ever. And so they don't have that sophistication to say, like, let me negotiate the best rate I can. I know what different rates are. So California, for example, says attorneys can get up to 25% of a case that settles and up to 33% of a case that goes to trial, because that's what that state felt is fair.
This is interesting. This is, we're all missing the pit tonight. I don't know if you guys are big fans. This has come up in the first episode of the second season. It's like, oh, we've all been sued. I've been sued 4 times, and there's one like goody two-shoes doctor's like, I've never been sued. Quick question for you, Katie. Do you have your charger for your computer?
I do.
Oh, good. Can I go get it from the back there?
Yeah, I can get it for you.
Okay, so I'll put it on the next bill. Or wait, no, we got no more bills to put up on the screen here.
Yeah, I think we can.
So, but we will add that. Mariana will add your bill in post. Yeah, I'm gonna go.
But maybe we could. I mean, I just want us not to dwell on it too much, but the sense that there are all these different stakeholders right now, and it feels like people are being pitted against each other. Like doctors versus lawyers, all this kind of stuff. Are there any lawyers here in the audience? I'm just curious.
There was. He left.
Oh, but I just want to throw this out there. Do trial lawyers have more power in New Mexico than in other states? Is that a fact or not?
I mean, I think they have more power in the state legislature than doctors, certainly. There's one practicing physician in the New Mexico Senate. There are multiple practicing malpractice attorneys. So just in the sense of whose voices are heard more, that's just the numbers.
I mean, there's one practicing doctor. There in the House, we have a nurse. And from my count, I believe there are 2 lawyers in the Senate, 2 malpractice lawyers in the Senate. And am I missing one in the House? I don't think we have any malpractice lawyers in the House. Are there 3 senators? Okay, yeah, well, I don't think we have any in the House. And so, when we're talking about an outsized voice, not outside, not inside either, but like an outsized voice, I actually don't believe that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do any of the doctors have a take on this as far as lawyers having more of an influence in New Mexico than in other states?
I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are, but I know that there's a lot more lawyers in the state than there are doctors. And the lawyers give a lot of money to state legislators for their election campaigns. And doctors are figuring it out that maybe we should start giving money to political campaigns too. But we do feel like there is a huge advantage towards lawyers in the state legislature.
Totally. And
I mean,
mention that you're running.
When I'm a doctor and I'm running for office.
I also just want to say, like, if you look at it historically, right? Like, if you're looking at monetary contributions historically, absolutely. Like, you see trial lawyers who have, quite frankly, funded the Democratic Party for years. And I will say it's because I actually believe we have an aligned moral compass. We want to see accountability with institutions. We want to see victims represented, right? So trial lawyers don't just do medical malpractice, right? Trial lawyers take on the big oil and gas companies. There are a bunch of trial lawyers that I work with that are protecting victims of sexual assault against who? People that were like, really CYFD? Like, really school systems? Like, they are representing victims, and that's their whole job. On the flip side, if you're talking about defense lawyers, they don't represent victims. They represent institutions. And so, you know, I feel like I've gotten a lot of slack from taking money from trial lawyers. I'm actually really proud of it. Like, I know that I have aligned values. Now, you can totally drag on me if I'm accepting money from like huge corporations, like drag me, please drag me. And I don't think my district would like it very much either. But to be honest, if we're looking at it historically, those are the two main sources of donations, and it's typically defense lawyers and corporations on one side. Sorry, Republicans. And it is trial attorneys who have funded Democrats for a very long time.
All right, thank you. Did you? But I was gonna say, I do think that it's a little bit of a different scenario when it comes to medical malpractice, because a lot of times on the other side of that is not a corporation, but literally is an individual doctor or a small clinic. And so you have a power imbalance if you have, in many cases, a large, potentially out-of-state law firm going up against doctors and clinics. I mean, anybody that's driven through Albuquerque to go to the airport or go downtown, there are a lot of billboards for attorneys, and specifically malpractice attorneys, and that's because there is a fair bit of money to be made in New Mexico suing doctors, unfortunately.
Yeah, I will say there was an equal amount of hospital billboards that are up. And like I said, like, I would much rather take my donations from people who are individuals, who are not big corporations. And I think that's really important if we're talking about integrity in politics.
Oh, who's behind all these blood-sucking hospitals and lawyers?
Yeah.
What is this about? We are hearing about private equity. We've gotten a little bit into it already tonight. So yeah, we don't have any bills that are specifically addressing this right now. But there were some in the past, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened?
Absolutely. So these big corporations we're talking about don't like these bills that we file. I mean, we had a Hospital Transparency Act, which quite honestly didn't even have to do with money. It was just like, tell us who your parent company is, tell us who your subsidiaries are. Like, just be honest with people. It's a transparency bill. And the hospitals came and totally crushed it. But we're also, used to it. There was a bill to stop corporate decision making in healthcare. And these are the cool things that like we all came to the table and agreed on, right? Where it was like, yeah, corporations should not be making decisions about like prior authorizations, right? Like, these are things that we, once again, all come together and we go, absolutely not, this is crazy. And anyone who's had to deal with a prior authorization, probably knows how that goes. But when we're talking
4 hours a week.
Right, and it's a total waste of time. It's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources. And so, when we're talking about private equity, I think the most important thing to know is the model of private equity. It's not privately owned, right? To me, privately owned is different. When we're talking about privately owned, we are talking about people who are mom and pop shop people, if you will. But when we're talking about private equity, like the whole model of private equity is to turn and burn, right? They don't stick around very long. They come, they eat, they leave. I feel like that's from The Lion King, but they do. They come, they eat, they leave. And
the circle of life.
Was it that? Anyway, Finding Nemo, I can't remember. But it sticks with me because I totally feel like these private equity suckers are coming in and they're telling, they're either taking over management, taking
Bugs
over.
Life.
Is it? Thank you, A Bug's Life. Okay, I knew it was Disney.
Speaking of corporations.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, speaking of banding together against the big bullies, like case in point. Anyway, so all of that to say, you have these private equity models, and their whole money-making scheme, if you will, is to come in, reduce costs, cut corners, right, and reform their management. And then when they get those cost lowers and the profits go up, they take those profits, they give them to their shareholders, and they leave. And that's the model. It's not even like a one-off that happens, it's literally how they make their money. And so when we're talking about private equity, we should be talking about safety in healthcare, right? Like, that's huge. We should be talking about working conditions. We should be talking about the fact that, like, RVUs, like, should not exist, right? The fact that you are making money based on the number of people that you see is wrong. And so, like, once again, these are things that we're all coming together on, but it's a huge part of talking about safety in medicine.
Yeah, so some research, the Private Equity Stakeholder Project reports that 36% of hospitals and more than 35% of nursing homes in New Mexico are owned by private equity. That means New Mexico has the highest proportion of private equity healthcare facilities in the country. Private equity firms, like we were saying, are structured to, have a turn on your investment, right? So it seems as though in many cases their priority is to turn a profit rather than the quality of care. That might not be the case always, but generally speaking, we can probably say that is true.
And how do they do that? Cut corners, right?
Yeah.
We're losing services.
Mm-hmm. Let me go to the next one. And research has shown that quality of care, right, can decrease, number of patients treated decline. So there are some negative consequences to private equity. And is there another bullet?
Let's see.
Oh yeah, and that they're generally in lower income rural areas. So we're bringing this up because we know that, again, like the stakeholder, when we've talked to doctors, and I'd love for one of you to speak to this as well, doctors are saying, this is a red herring, this is a distraction from medical malpractice. And I'd love to hear you talk more about that, but I also am just curious why these two issues are being pitted against each other, because I don't really understand why it has to be one or the other. Why aren't both of these things true? So, Dr. Bratton, would you like to address this? Oh, no.
It's okay, I'll bring it back.
Resuscitation.
So private equity is, in my mind, a problem because it takes the money that should be used for patient care and takes it out of the system to pay investors. But I also know that I've never heard a physician that went to medical school or a child that said they wanted to be a doctor when they grew up want to do it so they could work for a private equity place. We all think that we're doing it because we want to help patients, and working for a big corporation is not on our radar at all. We're talking about 35%, 36% of private equity, but then there's also the large corporations. And now in the state of New Mexico, only 20% of us are private practice physicians. Private practice physicians are those people who own their own practices, and you're seeing a few of us up here. And my practice has taken a stand that we don't want to sell to private equity, even though for a while we were getting calls daily wanting to purchase us and telling us what a good deal that would be for us. I think this is a yes and thing, if you've ever done improv. I think that the reason that physicians sell out to private equity isn't because they want to. I think they don't have other choices. I think if we want more private practice healthcare in New Mexico, we have to set up policies and laws that help private practices thrive. And if we keep making laws that don't help private practices thrive, we will continue to see fewer and fewer private practices and more corporate medicine. And we still have to change the malpractice laws or we're still going to lose physicians.
Yeah. If I could just address that, I think that's exactly where we come together. Like, we want to see mom and pop shops, local private practices, and so I feel like that's why I feel so strongly about drawing the line between, like, when we're talking about accountability, when we're talking about punitive damages, like making sure that it's the corporations that have the burden. I think the other thing, like, that you asked was, like, why are these being pitted against one another? Because, like, we totally agree on this, and I think the large majority of people I talk to agree on this. Why is it being pitted like that? Because the insurance companies and the big corporations are laughing at us fighting. They want it to happen like that.
Dustin.
Wait, hold on, Dr.
Oh, wait,
Hazel.
sorry. I just feel bad for you.
I know, we'll get to you, Dustin, we promise.
I just wanted to comment, in addition to private practice, I really think federally qualified health center is a great model that we should embrace.
Yes.
And especially for most of the communities that El Centro is in, they could not support a private practice. And I think supporting federally qualified health centers, especially in a state like New Mexico, which is so rural and so poor, is really an important thing we should also be doing.
Can you explain a little bit briefly what that means?
So federally qualified health centers, we get a grant, and if I were better at this, I would remember what the grant is, but there's a federal grant that we get that makes us a federally qualified health center.
Yeah.
And because of that, we get some special things. One is that we get, the big thing that keeps us in business is we get special rates for Medicare and Medicaid. So everybody else gets sort of fee for service, where you get more money if you do more complicated things, less money if you do. We get the same for every single visit. So if I see somebody to give them a tetanus shot, or if I see them for 27 different problems, from Medicaid, we're gonna get a $200 reimbursement, and I think it's $230 from Medicare. And we also get, from the federal grant, we're obligated to provide care for people without insurance at a sliding fee scale, and that is between $15 and $45. And so because of that, we are able to stay in business, and they really want to push it into poor communities and communities that are small enough they could not support a clinic otherwise. So.
Okay, so it's based kind of on geography and economic.
Yeah, and there's also plenty in poor areas of big cities, but it really is, for most of the small towns in New Mexico, if they have a medical clinic, it's an FQHC.
Dustin, is this something y'all are talking about in the halls at your locker?
Sure. Not at my locker personally, but it
Right.
is something that many tenured faculty across both state universities talk about. I will say that the existence of private equity in lower income areas is a great concern to me, and I'm certain it would be a great concern to other people statewide, because of the ability to connect zip code, social determinants of health, and health outcomes. Therefore, if private healthcare is going to exist in those zip codes, that's of concern to me. As far as speaking on the litigation, what movement there will be down the street on these particular topics, the specialists are speaking on that, but that is my comment on this slide, yes.
Okay.
Are students worried though about medical malpractice? Is that a concern, like, as they're getting into healthcare?
Yes, it's a frequently discussed topic. It was discussed today in a class I was in. I can't name that class or those people, but I cannot think of a professor teaching at the College of Nursing, College of Population Health, School of Medicine that's not integrating these conversations on a frequent basis. And doctor, thank you for mentioning it. A high number of people I interact with are not there to seek employment for the type of private equity in a low-income zip code I mentioned. The drive to serve their own communities, serve this state, that's the general priority. It's going to come down to the individual. If someone elects to be profit-driven, that's their decision. I will say the consensus was what you mentioned.
Awesome.
Great.
So we're
yeah,
getting
should we
to something
move
a little more cut and dry.
Well, I think we had a slide on Nexus because I know.
Oh,
some
yeah,
people don't
right. We gotta
understand.
talk about what's going on with this building.
Yeah. So I believe the Santa Fe New Mexican reported they had an investment deal not go through, which is why they had to shut their doors. But Mariana, you know some more about this, right?
This is also really interesting. Nexus actually came, I think it was last session, I'm pretty sure it was. All the days blend together now. But Nexus actually came with a bill because they were essentially being shut out by Christus. And I say shut out because what they needed were admitting privileges. They needed admitting privileges. Christus was the hospital that could give them admitting privileges close to them. And Christus, because quite honestly, I don't think they want competition, did not give them those privileges.
What is admitting privilege?
Like the privilege for a doctor to come into your facility and use your facility. And so, yes, and patients.
Do surgery, take care of patients inside the hospital.
So they wanted to be able to go between this facility and Christus?
Yes, so
So
let's
this
say
is
like
an
there was an
outpatient.
emergency.
Oh, this is out, okay.
Right, so like let's say there was an emergency or they had a surgery that they needed to do. And if they didn't have the facilities here, they would need admitting privileges at Christus. And so those were not granted, and so it kind of goes back, like not necessarily private equity specifically, even though I believe Christus is owned by a private equity corporation. Double check me on that, but I'm pretty sure. But all of that to say, it does go back to like greed and money in medicine. But back to FQHCs, because they're so freaking important for our communities, because FQHCs, federally qualified healthcare centers, like you do operate on this model that's kind of like a global budget, right? Like you get paid for all the things at a set price. And so like as we're talking about solutions, one of the things we need to put on the table is something like, one, investing in FQHCs, because y'all are on the chopping block with the current administration. And that's sad to see. But the other pieces of it is, if we're talking about solutions, we need to talk about things like global budgets, which at least provides for a projected revenue stream, specifically for like these smaller rural hospitals. It used to be a really lefty idea, but there are actually righties who are investing in the idea in other states, and I think it's great. And then the second piece that we need to talk about as we're talking about money in healthcare is universal healthcare, which would solve many of these problems.
That's going to be a
Yeah.
whole other
Yes.
show.
Totally.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for shedding light on that. Yeah, we do have to move on for timing.
Now we can talk about something a little less controversial. The licensure compacts.
Would like to take this on?
Yeah. Well,
Do you have
can I get just
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
set the stage?
Sorry.
So you know how you can drive up to Colorado or Arizona and you don't have to get a new driver's license every time you cross a state border? The doctors can't do that for some reason. Even telehealth, patients want to talk to an out-of-state doctor. That doctor has to be licensed in New Mexico, and it's a huge burden, and it can take months, and that it is a contributing factor into all of this. So yeah, who wants to speak more about that?
Well, we just had a slew of bills introduced right away, like from the first day of the legislature, I think. Mariana, do you want to?
I would love to.
We got Bill 1 up there.
I'm not in the Senate, so the Senate bill is still coming over, but I am on the House Health Committee, and I believe we passed about 9 or 11 compacts yesterday. There were a lot of compacts, but these are bills we've heard before. Thank you, 9. But there were a slew of them. We have passed them out of the House before. I will say, like, my concern with compacts in the past has been that there's been this narrative that you can't change an interstate compact. However, we have seen other states change interstate compacts. You still have to get approval by the board. But this route was really cool because during the interim, you actually had a whole host of legislators who came together to say, what are the changes we need? And why don't we get approval from the compact boards before we do this legislation so we can introduce legislation that goes through. We know the compact boards are going to accept it. Here's where my background in advocacy is like coming in fierce, because specifically when we're talking about abortion and gender affirming care here in the state that we worked so damn hard to protect. We needed to make sure the compacts were changed to make sure that we had sovereignty here in New Mexico so that our providers would not get their license taken away, that they would not be criminalized for practicing like this in our state and or other states. This was a problem last year when folks were trying to push the compacts through immediately and said this is, one of the only answers we have. And those of us who worked really hard on abortion gender affirming care were going, you guys stop, like these feds are crazy, we don't know what they're gonna do, and if the decisions are all made at the federal level, like nobody knows what's about to happen with that. So this year, compacts are coming back, and I'm really, really grateful that the legislators who came together to work on this made those changes. They made sure they were good and solid, and that we can pass them and feel really good about them.
Thank you. Yes, Christina.
Sure, so just to set the table a little bit more, going back to the intro, so interstate compacts are agreements among states. So we are actually in the driver's license compact. We're in about 42 compacts, there's 300 and some. And that's basically us saying to other states, we'll recognize your driver's license is good if you recognize ours is good. So New Mexico has been way behind the curve for doing this for healthcare providers. So we did it for nurses in 2003. We have many nurses practicing in the state under interstate compact licenses. But we are one of the last states to join most of the compacts. So 42 states, DC and Guam, are in the doctor compact. We are the ones that are not. And so if you look at all of our surrounding states, they're all in the doctor compact. They're all recognizing each other's licenses, doing quick licensing of each other, so that therefore, if you're in Colorado and you want to get on a telehealth call with somebody at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, easy peasy, no problem. We are left out of that. And so we have stories like Michael Casaus, whose son has a rare cancer, literally driving 4 hours from Albuquerque to El Paso just to get on a Zoom call with someone in a compact state, because Texas is in the compact, New Mexico is not. So it's created massive burdens for patients. Fully agree on the need for protections for reproductive and gender affirming care. That was in the compact as introduced last year. And glad that it is still in the compact, and glad the Senate is finally making it a priority, Senate Bill 1. And honestly, that's because of everybody that emailed their senators. So all of the compacts were introduced last session. Appreciate Representative and I and all of the House members that passed 7 compacts unanimously last session. But unfortunately, the Senate Judiciary Committee was not there yet. They're there now on the doctor compact. We want to get them there on the other compacts. So we need compacts for psychologists, for EMTs, counselors, physical therapists. We have shortages across the professions. And again, there's just no need to create these extra barriers. We just need to work cooperatively with other states. We heard from a dentist, has a practice in Gallup, lost his one licensed dentist in Gallup and said, I have some folks in other states that I could cycle in if we were in the dental compact, but instead having to wait like 6 months to get somebody licensed, and meanwhile I can't provide that dental care there. So compacts are not a fix-all, but they knock down an unnecessary barrier and just make it easier for folks to move among states.
Does that mean it would not take so long to get it, because when we hire somebody from out of state, we've got 3 to 6 months for them to get licensed.
You got it.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. And I think we're gonna get there.
We are, so this feels like a slam dunk.
We hope so.
Okay.
Well, thank you for bringing that, because I hadn't heard about what the reservations were. I knew something about sovereignty, but didn't fully understand what that meant. So, because we are a little island here, providing this crucial reproductive and gender affirming care. So, thank you for introducing that.
And weed, we provide weed for those states.
Colorado was
compact state.
Yeah. Dustin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Sure. The passage of the compacts is absolutely essential. Some of these serve as a lifeline when you think about situations in border towns like Gallup, Farmington, Albuquerque. The ability for people who are tied to our native nations to have someone to communicate with through a telehealth service that speaks their language and understands their needs, critical. The ability for people in Arizona to perform that type of service for a person living in Albuquerque must happen. This goes for every type of practice that was named there. That's integral. That's a survival issue. Every community has lives on the line. Specifically, I would like to highlight that for our native nations in the Four Corner states, the access to telehealth will change lives immediately. We're training the workforce at state universities and the Department of Health right now There's language minors and certificates offered that are health oriented, both for Diné Navajo people. And there's private centers like the Karis Children's Language Center. They would love to be involved in workforce training. It can't happen currently as people are in training. We need to be able to have people to reach across straight lines, especially for those communities who are in need, specifically regional Native nations.
Thank you, and that's a good segue. I know, I think we have another legislation thing we can just,
Oh,
yeah, the 9 House
We got
bills.
9 of them.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But that's a good segue into this topic of workforce development. And this was another thing that Think New Mexico highlighted, the need for growing our own. Why does this keep cutting off?
You want to trade?
No, it's okay. Yeah, because New Mexico has so many tribal communities, cultural competency is really crucial. So the importance of career and pathways, pipelines. It's not my fault. Thank you. Yeah, education and career pipelines for people who are from New Mexico to stay in New Mexico. So you were just speaking to this, Dustin. Do you want to say more about what your program is doing, and what is the general feel of young people right now? Do they feel excited? Are they worried? What's happening?
Sure, in my program, where I'm enrolled, the Declared Population of Health major, research has been published. It's evaluating programs that have been implemented and deployed in the state. We see when people receive treatment in settings such as an emergency room visit, various techniques that could cause them to visit less frequently, or maybe not even again for that particular issue. A whole network can be built around that type of interaction as they can receive care and telehealth before and after, and we can train a workforce to take the burden off of the current shortage so that when they're processed and interacting with staff, that's competent, that's well trained. It's coming from students who are coming from challenging programs. There's a BA MD program that's connected. Once you go through that initial challenging 4 years, you have a spot reserved at the School of Medicine at UNM, where much like Nexus Health, a brand new building is constructed. It's a nursing and public health building. It is open, we do classes in there every day. The quality of the faculty there, both and at New Mexico State University, is incredibly high. Several endeavors and research centers are working on coordinating between New Mexico State and University of New Mexico, offering training field sites across the state where people who are about to graduate from these programs can go and begin supporting physicians and personnel right away, especially places like Gallup, Farmington, and in rural areas. Though I will mention again, as far as quality of life, having the ability to communicate with someone who speaks your language, understands the needs of your community without traveling 3 and 4 hours must happen. There will be immediate results.
And so one of the things that coming up in the legislature or policy reform is around student loan repayment. So we'd like to get into that a little bit because this is important both for recruiting and retaining doctors here. So maybe Christina, you could say more about what the current program is for student loan repayment.
Sure. So most states have some kind of student loan repayment for healthcare workers. New Mexico's had one for quite a while, but for a long time it was more symbolic than actual. We funded it at less than $2 million a year. Only about 7% of people that applied actually got that money. So it was really not a really effective tool. That started to change 2023. The House did a big boost in funding, got it up to 14, almost $15 million from less than 2 million. But unfortunately, we still compare badly to states in terms of how much, especially incoming doctors can receive. So new doctors carry about $250,000 worth of student loan debt from all of those years of school. And so they are actively looking around saying, how much of this can I get off of my back? Like what do the different state programs look like? New Mexico's currently caps out at $75,000, so we'll pay off $25,000 a year for up to 3 years, which is good, but all of our surrounding states are better, and 36 states total are better, and we'll pay off more. And so we don't compare well. So if you're looking at that as an important factor, we don't look competitive. And so the good news is there are several bills that have been introduced. House Bill 66 on the House side, Senate Bills 14 and 11 on the Senate side. Both of those really boost us from lagging the nation to best in the nation. So we would pay off up to $300,000 for doctors. It gets the money up to $25 million instead of 15, so big boost. And what's great about our program is it doesn't just cover doctors, it also covers a lot of allied health professions. So more than 20 other professions that are also carrying debt, usually less than doctors, although dentists actually more wildly, but usually nurses and physical therapists carrying some debt, but not as much. So for all of them, it makes a huge recruitment difference.
This mic really doesn't work. So do we feel good that this is gonna pass too? Because I know we're kind of worried about budget stuff right now, especially with the early childhood, whatever that's called, thing that my kid is getting. Do we feel strongly that this one's gonna make it through?
I feel like I always put the bar really low, so I'm never disappointed. So that's just me. But I do believe that there's actually political will to do it. And so I think, it's always per usual going to be about the budget numbers. But I think that the actual political will to want to do it is totally there. Yeah.
I think the House and Senate both agree, which is 90% of that.
And we're 90% there.
Yeah. Dr. Hayes, you have talked about residency programs also and how that's a huge problem in this state. Can you say more about that?
So we had a residency program at my clinic. We had just started our second year of residence, and we had been trying to hire faculty for a year. And one of the problems with all the problems that have already been enumerated why there are low physicians is it's just at this point become kind of a really vicious spiral that physicians are leaving because there are so few physicians, and not coming to the state because of it as well. And if they're going to come to the state, they may end up going to a place, in Albuquerque or somewhere that's going to pay a lot higher than a poor rural clinic can do. So anyway, we had been trying to hire faculty for a year. And then at the beginning of the year last year, one of our program director, her husband got dosed, and they ended up having to leave, and another faculty member was also planning to leave. And we'd already been trying to hire for years, so we were down to one faculty member, and we couldn't sustain it.
And this was in Espanola?
This was in Espanola. We had 8 residents at that time. 7 of them had left the state. They would have stayed in New Mexico. All of them would have stayed in New Mexico, but there was just no residency program available that could take them. And unfortunately, the way that residencies are funded, they have to be funded through hospitals, and the funding was going through Christus. And we had thought, the remaining faculty member and the rest of us at the clinic had said, we will support the residency through June. And then Christus abruptly decided October 1st that they were not going to participate anymore. So basically, those residents had 3 months to find a new position. And
Does it come down to corporation private equity again?
It's crazy.
I don't know what their reasoning was. I think it was I won't go into it. It was devastating and really heartbreaking for the residents who, many of them had moved long distances to come to this program. And studies show that people are very likely to remain where they do residency. And so I had 7 physicians, so I was thinking,
That's right.
starting in a year and a half, I was maybe going to be able to hire some of them to work in the clinics. And now they're scattered across the country, and we'll see if any of them actually come back. So
That's horrible.
So at this point, I feel like the low number of physicians is actually the biggest detriment to getting physicians, because people are worried about whether or not they're going to be able to get primary care and specialty care. The woman who you showed earlier, she said one of the reasons she left was there were no plastic surgeons to do the plastic surgery after she performed her surgery. And like I said, we couldn't train physicians because we couldn't hire faculty. So it's just because there's so few physicians, it just makes the problem worse. And I think this hopefully will stop the drain, but the fact that there are just so few physicians is become its own problem in recruiting and retaining physicians here. So
Snowballing is the downstream effect.
If I can too, per usual, add to the list as well. Right, our need to actually expand residencies themselves, right, is a huge thing. Once again, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I'm really trying to tackle this problem, you guys. But I have a strategic recruitment bill for healthcare providers, because a lot of what we're hearing from the folks who are applying here is about licensing and credentialing, right? It's about going through this process that takes like a ridiculous amount of time, like way